to the ratings chair. We've taken into consideration so the intent of tonight is to present everybody the revised, and then all of the board members, and especially the board members that are the liaisons for your individual associations, you will want to talk to your boards, your membership, in order to understand how your association wants to vote on this system, as we will be voting on the system that we're presenting tonight. So what I am going to ask, and I don't know, Spencer, when you're going to start the live feed, is that let me get through going through this presentation once, and then we can kind of go through it slide by slide, or we can jump around based on questions asked. But if I can, once we get into it, have the floor for 20-30 minutes or so to present it, we can go from there. Okay, let me share. All right, is everybody seeing my screen with the presentation?
Yep.
Fantastic. Spencer, are we now live?
Yes, we are.
Fantastic. Okay. Thanks everybody for coming tonight to listen to this system. Again, I just want to reiterate that this has been a work in progress over the last 10 to 12 months since the Canadian board voted in favor of exploring the development of a updated rating system. So as you can see, we've added the comment that this is going to be a soft launch program. It is a new way of looking at ratings, and we want to ensure for the inaugural year, or for the first launch of this program, that we're putting up some guardrails of how we jump into it and how we actually implement it. So let me. As all of you know, ratings have long been a subject of controversy, and I'll try not to read exactly from the pages, but historically, all of us riders and competitors have been rated by other riders or competitors, or at least an individual. Inherently, that means that the system that we are being rated by is subjective. So all of us, I think, can agree that we love to team pen because we race against the clock. It's not a judged event where we're being scored for how good our turns are or how long we can slide in the stop. Yet how we are ranked, how we are rated, is very much based on a subjective viewpoint, from, you know, starting with one ratings coordinator, but then trickling down to many ratings chairs.
Laura, I hate to interrupt you for a second here. I don't think there's sound on the live stream right now.
Oh, thanks, Aspen.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just getting some messages here.
No, I super appreciate that. So I didn't get an hour and 30 minutes into the conversation.
Yes, they can see the slide, but they just can't hear you.
Okay. Spencer, any way to troubleshoot that? Testing.
Got live, sound on my live feed.
Okay, I'm gonna just do testing. Do we have anybody else on a live feed that potentially, like, is it more than one individual, Aspen?
Yeah, I have like my whole board's trying to watch here, and none of them can hear it.
Okay.
The live feed is a little delayed.
Testing.
I just signed on and there's volume there.
Thank you, Brad.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Say that again, Aspen.
Yeah, we're good. They can hear you now. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. No, much appreciated. Okay, for those of us who were having issues hearing, I really only touched the first bullet point and introduced the system. I'm not going to backpedal because I think we still haven't gotten to the meat and potatoes. Future ratings. So one of the things that we do want to highlight is that we as a sport have evolved. We now have Sword Arena, and we believe that we can now use Sword Arena to rank. I'm going to use the word rank, and that's highlighted in red, rider performance against peers based on a few simple objectives. By using a database system, we can move away from a subjective viewpoint of an individual or individuals and really go to an unbiased system where we can use objective measures to create a more even playing field. By creating a system that we can use data and objective rules, it also supports continuity and consistency of ratings regardless of the person managing data. So if we have a change in the ratings committee or what used to be the ratings coordinator, and we're proposing that coordinator position now becomes a committee of 3, when there's change, hopefully not year over year, but within every, over the years, the ratings still stay consistent, even when we change whomever is running that program. The problem, as we see it, and that what we're trying to solve for, is the current rating system is complex and it's expensive to administer at a national level. I'm going to quiet down here for a second and let Megan Blythe jump in regarding costs, because this is really one of the reasons why we really wanted to explore this system.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Blythe, and I'm treasurer of the Nationals and the Canadian. You'll have to pardon me if I cough a little bit. I have picked up a bit of a cough here. So one thing I wanted to highlight, and Laura, do you mind if I steal the screen from you?
Not at all.
Okay. I'm just gonna share my screen here and jump back over to, sorry. So talk about a bit of the rating coordinator and the judging coordinator. So actually, apologies, that was not what I wanted to open. So in the year of 2024, we spent approximately $40,000 plus on rating coordinators, judging coordinators, and the travel and the pay associated with that. Now, I've done quite a bit of bookkeeping this year for 2025. And so in the year of 2025, we've collected, we had a big year, 42,000 of levies and 24,000 of membership, which is great. We have about 716 members, but if we look at our current budget and what we have, we actually we have budgeted just under 50% of what we take in, and that goes towards those costs. So right now, kind of with a mid-year, we've spent about 15,500, and our budget for the full year was around 26,000. So as you can see, that's actually really quite a significant amount of what the Canadian takes in. So in past years been very unfeasible to kind of carry on, and especially if there's multiple people at this role or if we have judge travel. So we've made a lot of changes this year regarding expenditures, and as a result of this, it has made sort of the Canadian account recover to the point where great prizes and a lot of sort of giving back to each of the clubs is now within reach and back sort of on the radar for what the Canadian can do for all of the regional clubs. So I just thought I'd sort of highlight those changes. As Laura mentioned, I'll stop sharing my screen now and let her jump back on. But in the past, it has been a very heavy expenditure in comparison to almost exclusively everything else that the Canadian is paying out as expenditures. So that's it for me. Any questions?
I'm going to keep going, Meg, and just let people ask questions at the end just so we can kind of get through it. So again, expensive and complex to administer. I think from a board standpoint, it also means that it's an additional hired employee that we are having to not only pay for, but manage. We already touched on this, but I think all of us have seen ratings be controversial because they are opinion-based. They're inherently can be risks of conflict of interest because most of the time we have had a ratings coordinator that and ratings have been done by our competitors. So whether we try and do the right thing or not, there still is a conflict of interest continuity as we move from year to year about who sits in that role, and members may perceive ratings to be unfair. I will also say this came up when we met with the chairs. There's pride and there's feelings that can get hurt when members are moved, whether it be up or down based on an opinion. Whereas if we can lean on the data, we can really say, hey, this isn't about how you ride or how you look. It is truly about the data of how your success or we won't use failure, we'll create a different word, but either you're succeeding or you're not. The data is showing what you did over the course of that year, and if we move a rating based on that data, that it's not somebody's opinion, it's just numbers. So the objective of what we're trying to do is evolve the system to utilize quantitative data through using Sortarena's data. As I said, over the past 9 months, we've been creating a system to do so. We've presented it to the chairs. We've incorporated the feedback and created the soft launch program we're going to be showing you today. You will see an illustrative analysis of a quantitative, so numbers-based data approach. For the sake of the work we've done this year, all of the data you're going to see is based on 2024 data outputs. It's not current to date using this year's data. It's from a past year's data. Through the course of the work we've done over this year, we've also had to fix some things in the data. For instance, going through this process, we would find that there was a few riders that had multiple Sortarena IDs. So we've been also working on cleaning up any data errors. We had an association that wasn't putting their fees and their winnings in Sortarena, so we've been working with them to fix that. So what I can tell you is, for the purpose of analysis, we know we've looked at the 2024 data. We think we've based some of our changes and our recommendations on what we found in that data. We also found that there were some holes in that data that we've tried to plug. The goal for implementation and kind of the next steps is that we're presenting this program, this soft launch today to the Canadian board. We're having all of the Canadian rating chairs look at this presentation with us, and then we have done the live stream so additional competitors and riders can understand what we're talking about. In, I believe it's 2 weeks, but Spencer would have to confirm, there will be a Canadian meeting where the Canadian board will vote to either adopt this new system or to not adopt the system, and then leave it as is. If we vote to adopt the system, high level, the process would be after nationals this year, we will run the data and we will do a quantitative analysis. We will have a meeting with the chairs prior to one of our members associations first shows of this next year, which actually will happen in this year, and we will go through the process. So again, the idea is that the 2025 data will serve as input for the 2026 ratings. So what are we talking about? What we're talking about is ranking, and again, I'm going to use the word rank, not rate, all riders based on Sorter Arena data within their peer groups or their respective ratings. That is high level, guys. There's going to be a whole bunch of asterisks of when it doesn't work, some options of when we're going to get objective feedback from the chairs and from a rating committee, but high level, we're ranking all riders based on Sorter Arena data within their peer group or rating. This is a change from what was presented to the rating chairs, but what we feel is the best approach for the inaugural soft launch season of 2026. In 2026, 15%, so at the end of 2025, moving into 2026, 15% minimum of all riders in each rating will be moved up based on their quantitative analysis. So if we had 100 riders, and I'll show you this, the top 15%, top 15 riders that are ranked against each other in their peer group will be moved up for the following season. Now, for 2026, again, listening to our regional rating chairs, we are going to give the ability for the rating chairs to veto moving any one of those riders up based on data. If they do choose to veto, it will need to be a unanimous vote to veto. Just a side note, unanimous will mean that there is no opposing votes. If somebody says, I don't know this rider at all, I'm not going to vote, that won't count for or against. So rating chairs, you will have the ability to veto the system, for better lack of words, and not move somebody up based on data. If you choose to do so, though, you will have to pull somebody else up and to move. So we do want to see a minimum 15% of each rating move up. Again, there's some asterisks, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. Keyword there also is minimum. If there are riders that you feel outside of that top 15% that also need to move up, this will be discussed at the annual chair meeting, and that would be an objective vote, a typical vote that you guys may have of majority rules on moving somebody up. For the soft launch inaugural year, we're going to look at the data, and we're going to look at the bottom 10% of all riders in each rating, and the CTCPA will recommend that those riders are moved down to the next rating if they're in that bottom 10%. For this inaugural year, we are going to give that list to the regional ratings chairs, and they're going to have the option to move riders down based on their qualitative analysis, and then they will give that option to the individual riders. We received some feedback that at least until we understand the system and until all of the competitors in Canada understand the system, we don't want to catch people off guard, and we want people to understand its data, and we don't want people to get discouraged by the sport. So we're not going to do any automatic moves down the first year. These are going to be optional, recommended and optional, with the support of the ratings chairs on making those decisions. A couple of notes, and I'll try and bring these up along the way. Rating peer groups with less than 20 riders are going to be exempt from the minimum moves. So when I say exempt from the minimum moves, I'm going to use our number 7 ranked riders. There's only a handful of those ranked riders. We're not going to move the top 15% of the number 7 riders automatically, because there's just not a large enough peer group to do a ranked quantitative analysis automated move. We will still do the quantitative analysis. We will still look at their numbers, but there will be no automatic moves based on the data for peer groups of less than 20. I will also say for the number 1 rated riders, we would not be moving anybody down to an N, even though we're looking at recommending riders or the bottom 10% are moved down. We're not going to move people below a 1 to an N. When you're a 1, you will stay a 1. So what is a quantitative approach? Really simple. We're looking at data. We're looking at numbers. It's facts. It's a math versus an eyeball approach. We are going to be using Sort Arena data that's collected through all Canadian competitors. If you are a competitor that competes in both the US and Canada, we will only be using the data from your Canadian shows. We will be pulling all Canadian shows where riders are using Canadian rankings. The proposal for this soft launch is we're going to be using a combination of riders' winnings to fees ratio. So if you spend $5,000 and you make $10,000 in winnings, you have a 200%. Am I doing the math right there? Winnings ratio. You've done extremely well. In addition to riders' winnings to fees ratio, we're going to be looking at your Sort Arena performance score. I don't know how many of you as competitors have gone on to Sort Arena. I don't think you can see this on your app. You'd have to go onto an actual desktop. But every rider with a Sort Arena account, which I think is all riders, you will actually have a score. These are derived from heads per minute and successful rides. So if you are penning cattle under the set time allotment, you are getting a performance score. We as a group did several, we looked at many iterations of how to weight this. Do we do 100% winnings to fees and have it only be money? I will say RSNC, for instance, really only looks at money. So there's precedents for there. There's other sports out there, say roping, that look at money. We did want to still balance it out with a look at people's actual success rate penning, and some consistency that might not always show up in the pay window. We looked at doing 50-50. We looked at doing 25-75 one way and 75-25 the other way. And where we landed after looking at how people were moved last year versus the analysis we've done, we felt that going to a 25% weight on your Sort Arena score and a 75% weight on winnings to fees got us to a really comfortable place where it really aligned with what we've done in the past. So let's take a look at it, because I think this is the way that I can really explain it a little bit better, is when we actually look at this. For the sake of today, I've actually hidden riders' names because I don't want anybody to get too caught up into looking at names. What you see on the far left-hand column is riders' ID. And if we move from left to right, you see their rating, number of shows they've done, number of teams they've ridden on, their total entry fees, their winnings, and then their earn back percentage. Now, here's a key part, and ratings chairs, I don't think I did a very good job explaining this in our last meeting, so hopefully this helps a little bit. If you look at the rider at the very top of this chart, you will see that this rider had 161% earn back percentile. The next category, or earn back percentage. The next category is percentile. So what we do is we actually take whatever you win as a percent, and then we're going to rank you against your peers. So the person with 161% earn back ratio, that put that person in the 95th percentile against their peers. The reasoning behind this is when you get a really, call it lumpy sum, and I know there's been concerns voiced about Nationals and Stampede and even some of our other associations that you can win really large checks at, that one large check can really unbalance the data overall. And when we actually do what we've proposed here and we use the earn back percentile to look at your composite score, it will even that out a little bit and not make a lumpy one-time win as impactful. Going to the next column, you'll see you have your Sort Arena score, your Sort Arena score percentile. And then to get the composite score, we're taking your earn back percentile, using the weight we've applied to that of a 75% ratio. So we go 95 times 75%, and then we actually add that to the sort arena score of 94 times 25% to get your composite score. So this spreadsheet that you're looking at here is sorted based on everyone's composite score. You could sort it by their earn back percent, their short arena score, whatnot, but as we're using the M composite score, it's sorted that way. So the system, or what we're saying is the system, is that we would take the top 15% of riders, which I've highlighted here in green. These riders would move from a number 4 rated rider to a number 5 rated rider for the following season. For the soft launch program, what we've proposed to say is, if the rating chairs at their annual meeting disagree with any of those riders highlighted in green, that they really feel they should not be moved up, and they disagree that the data tells the whole story, they would have the option of leaving that person a 4. However, they would then need to replace that person with somebody else. They would need to say, okay, I actually, I think this person should be a 5 more so than this person, and replace that. So we are moving a minimum of 15%. A couple other notes here about the program. And again, I'm kind of trying to show you versus just giving you a rule book. You will see that there are two riders, 5990 and 29921, that are highlighted in gray or grayed out. So one of the things that we have discussed is riders that do not have a minimum of $1,800 in entry fees. While we will leave you in the list, so we will look at your data, you're not going to be automatically moved based on data. So let's say this person at 5990, they actually were in that top 15%. We would just take the person below them, 9490, and move. They would be in green instead because the person didn't hit the minimum threshold. How did we get to the minimum threshold? We took the number of teams, not number of shows, but the number of actual teams required to ride at nationals. We multiplied that by our average entry fees across Canada and came up with 1,800. Beyond the 15%, what I'll say is, again, we do want to do more of a soft launch versus hard rules. So the ratings chairs will have the option of moving additional people outside of that 15% if they feel somebody else should be moved. We're going to go and look again at the, call it, I couldn't fit it on one page. So this is showing you the bottom percentile. You'll see a few more people grayed out that didn't ride that this much. So what we would do is we would provide this list to the ratings chairs, and we would say anybody highlighted in yellow, we would recommend offering these riders the option to move down. As this system develops, and what we would like to see happen is that riders become a bit more comfortable, I'll move to this next slide, with fluidity and movement between ratings, that you're not, we're not worried about, we don't want you to be feelings to be hurt or get discouraged because you move down. Potentially you changed horses or something in life changed and you just didn't have as strong of year. When we look at data, the intent is to assess your success over the course of a year. And if the data shows that you move up, you move up. If the data shows you move down, you move down. If the data shows you are right where you're supposed to be, you stay there. The next year, if let's say you get moved down, the data shows you get moved down, you really should be at the top of the rating you were moved down to, and it's very likely that you might move back up the year after that. So a bit more fluidity year over year, I think, can be expected with this system, but I think it can really support people, and it's more reflective of how you as a rider are doing. Our vision is that riders will be rated once a year at the end of each season, so long as they're eligible for that analysis. We are still working out the fine print, but the details are there will be call it an early season option for ratings chairs to move riders for this first soft launch. I talked a little bit just about more comfortable moving up and down. How do we get to 15%? One of the questions that might come up, just to touch base on that. In 2024, the CTPCA had 67 number 4 rated riders. Based on the qualitative system, we moved 13 of them. So that was what we did in 2024 for the 2025 system. On the proposed system, 10 riders would automatically be moved up with the 15%. So we actually did a little bit of a lesser move than we did this last year. So we went a little bit below the threshold of what we had done before, because we still have the option to do more, but we want a minimum threshold of how many we move up. I'm going to talk a bit again about how it's all calculated, because it can be quite confusing. We've got spreadsheets, we've got data, but I'll try and go through this again. So top 15% minimum move up, the middle 75% will be assessed by ratings chairs at the annual meeting, but recommended to stay. Bottom 10% recommended to move down. Soft launch, there is still a say for ratings chairs in all of this. So how do we calculate it? So we calculate individuals' win back percentage, winnings divided by fees. That gives you your win back percentage. Next, we rank riders' win back percentage against their own peer group or rating cohort. And that's how we actually get your percentile versus percentage. We weight that percentile by the 75% weighting, and that's part of the equation. The next part of the equation is we take your sort arena score, we multiply it by the designated weight of 25. We add the weighted sort arena score, we add your weighted win back percentile ranking, and that creates a rider's composite score. We can come back to this, but the math kind of is laid out here. I'm also happy if Spencer at the end of this passes out the presentation, so you guys have call it the calculations of how we get there. I think I've hit on it enough. Top 15% minimum in each ranking will be moved down. Bottom 10% will be recommended to move down. There will be, these lists will be provided to the ratings chairs prior to the annual rating chair meeting. At the meeting, ratings chairs can veto any rider from moving up. However, we do need to meet the minimum threshold of 15% moving up. So they would need to move somebody else up in lieu of. The bottom 10% is a recommendation. We are not going to hold the 10%, call it as a threshold of those who have to move. All right. So I want to check, do a check-in with everybody on, but what if? There's lots of, it won't work for this one. It won't work for this one. First and foremost, I do want to highlight that this system, there's no way I can say it's perfect because we haven't implemented it. There's been a lot of people thinking about this, trying to fill the holes, for better lack of words, but it's not perfect, nor was our current system. So we're not going for perfection. We're going for a system and a program that we can build on, that we can refine year over year, and ultimately that costs the association less. So the other thing I want to say is, if this system is working for 95% of our 750 plus members, it's a success. There's always going to be one or two people that are great examples of why it doesn't work. We're trying to set up guidelines or guardrails, but I really want everybody to open their minds and say, let's not find the one person the system doesn't work for. Let's make sure that this system is built so the majority, and by majority, we're A+ in school kind of majority of 95% plus, it is successful for, and it costs our association much less. A couple of the things that are guidelines and guardrails are riders with under $1,800 of fees a year. They will not be ranked quantitatively. Again, we'll put them in the system, but we'll run the data, but we will grade them out. Riders who have rode for less than 1 year will not be in the system. They're going to come up, but we're going to gray them out. The other thing, and I didn't note it in here, but it is in the rule book that we have created to follow this presentation. Riders who have had more than 2 years off, 2 consecutive years off, they would also be analyzed qualitatively, not quantitatively. Rating peer groups with less than 20 competitors, they're going to be moved or not moved on a qualitative basis. Even if we give do a data analysis, we're not going to move them automatically based on data. Any foreign competitors, and we've noted in here, any foreign competitors with less than $1,800 of fees spent. I missed actually cleaning this one up. Any foreign competitors, and by that in the rule book, we've actually defined foreign competitors as those who ride more in the US than Canada. They would not be ranked quantitatively. We'll assess them, but we're going to do a qualitative assessment. And then just as a side note, any competitors with a 100% win-loss ratio will not be eligible to move down. Again, just a guideline or a guardrail to ensure we're not moving anybody down that should not move down. So what does the process look like? What this would look like is that the CTCPA, so the Canadian Team Penning Cattle or Canadian Team Cattle Penning Association, will process the data after nationals in October. We'll create an analysis of the data, much like I showed you on my screen earlier, and we will rank all riders against each other in their peer group based on that composite score. So from the top ranked rider in their peer group to the bottom, and then we will highlight the top 15%, the bottom 50 or bottom 10%, and we'll gray out ineligible riders. We'll then provide that analysis to all of the ratings chairs at the annual ratings meeting. So all the ratings chairs will have the chance to analyze it. And then at that meeting, there will be votes if anybody disagrees with the top 15%, if anybody wants to vote on riders outside that 15% being moved down, and then discussion about any or moved up, and then discussion about people moving down. Once those decisions have been made at the annual meeting, regional chairs will notify riders of the ratings changes, or for the soft launch inaugural year, give riders the option to move down if they fall in that bottom 10%. The CTCPA will operate using Sortarena as the platform, will be responsible for tracking competitors' entry fees, winnings, performance, and data. I will also say that we are going to strive to do a much better job of just tracking riders' ratings in general year over year. There really has not been a, call it a tracked system of all ratings in Canada, to be honest with you, of having those down. So just a little bit more in-depth track of riders and their ratings. So what does it look like from an organizational perspective? So the CTCPA as own the rating system that we all use. So what we have proposed, or what we're proposing, is that we eliminate the paid role of the ratings coordinator that we have historically had. And from the board, we would have a data manager, a ratings chair, and then we would also have another ratings member to have call it a committee, a CTCPA rating committee made up of 3 people. 2 people on the board, 1 person that could be pulled from outside of the board. These 3 members for the inaugural season, and then the intent would hopefully be to do this for 2 years, would be volunteer members, much like any of us who sit on the board right now, to run this committee. After 2 years, once we've established this program a bit more and understand the time commitment, there may be a reinstatement of a paid position for any of these roles. But until we understand the time commitment, we don't want to carte blanche pay a set fee for that. So I can say that myself and Robert have offered to be the 2 board members, and I believe Spencer has reached out to 2 other people outside of the board in regards to that 3rd person to be on the committee. You will also see that I have noted the CTCPA member associations. So that is all of our regional associations, all of whom have a ratings chair. In this system, the ratings chairs very much still have a role. In fact, as we eliminate really a traveling ratings coordinator, I'd say the regional chairs have as big, if not a bigger role. And hopefully this system actually just provides rating chairs with more data and input and ways to look at some people to help make educated, informed decisions. I'm not going to touch too much on the financial budget benefits, as I think Meg did a great job. So from there, I am going to stop sharing, and we can open it up for questions, and I can jump back into the presentation at any point. Robert, Meg, or Spencer, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Laura, I think you did a great job. I don't want everybody to focus too much on the cost savings. I think that is going to be a good side note, but I do think this system will help us all have enough data to really, I think it takes the personal feelings out of it and really gives us an opportunity to just see it under numbers like a lot of sports do. A lot of sports, it's how many times you get the ball to the hole, how many bats you get. It's all about the numbers. And I think that will take the personal away and make it a lot easier on all of us as chairs and as committee members. So I think that's a good point. We did go through these numbers a whole bunch of times. We looked at numerous different scenarios and what worked the best. And what we have presented to you is what we think is the best balance of the sort arena with the win-loss percentile. So there was a lot of work put into it, and that's just my 2 cents.
I would just, echo Robert's thoughts there. The financial savings, yes, they are a side note, but they're something to just keep in the back of your mind. And also, great job, Laura. I think your presentation was fantastic.
All right, so I do think we're still live. Any questions? And I think we can open this up to board members who are seeing this presentation for the first time, and also ratings chairs who are seeing the revised soft launch program based on the feedback that we received from you all.
Hey, Laura, Dwayne here. You were talking about, like, we touched base on it very shortly there as far as the role of the ratings chairs, like, I guess with in the top 15 percentile. But I know, like, when we were doing the ratings chairs, we were asking, like, what's going to be is going to be complete. It's got to be a complete unanimous decision, or is it the data gets 2 votes, or what are we doing there? Like, I'm just wanting to make sure that kind of gets cleaned up. And the other one is, you touched on it softly there, like, what are we going to do? Is there going to be something in hardcore as far as when we do our reviews in the spring, and Frank or Sally or whoever went out and bought a $80,000 horse and is really knocking this thing out of the park, what is going to be kind of the framework as to for the numbering chairs and committees to almost overrule the data that you have from last year? Because now going forward, it's not, your stuff is kind of not what we see today, sort of thing.
Yeah,
Laura?
Dwayne, touch base on both of those really quick, and then I'll let Robert. So to be frank, Dwayne, one of the things is we listened to the meeting. The proposal is for a minimum 15% of riders to move up, again, with guidelines and guardrails, and that it will need to be a unanimous vote. So we heard you all that you need a say, and we respect that, but we also, for this system to be meaningful and for it to make sense for the data, we have to use that data. So what we fought and what we proposed is that it's not 2 votes. Like, we were trying to figure out how to write that. We went back and forth. So our proposal, and again, this can get voted on or not, but the proposal is the top 15% will be automatically moved. However, you can unanimously vote against it. So that's one. The second one, in regards to early season moves, we will not be running a data analysis early season. There just isn't enough data. We need to actually write the rules. What I can tell you is the proposal is that there will be an option for ratings chairs to engage the committee and request a move made. It's a new system. We're going to have to work together on it. But what I can tell you is that there's not a rule written one way or another, but the proposal is that there will be an option for early moves.
So
Robert,
Dwayne, that's a really good question. I'm glad you brought it up. So I'm going to talk about the mid-season or early season move. If your committee right now, just for the soft launch, and we'll see what we would do next year, but right now for the soft launch, if your committee is 100% in agreement that a person needs to move, at that point in time, we would move them as long as you have a unanimous agreement in your committee, and you guys are all 100% in agreement, then we would move them. And again, Drew, that's the way we would handle it this year, to the best of my knowledge. But we would like you to have some facts to back it up. So we would like to be able to document why you would think that it changed from our November meeting or December meeting, whatever the date we picked to have our end year meeting, to the spring. And if you have data to explain to us why, and you guys are 100% in agreement, I don't see a problem moving people. And I think there will be some kind of, in the future, some kind of leeway for that at all times, but there has to be quite a unanimous agreement. Does that answer your question, Dwayne?
Yeah, it does. Like I said, I just want to make sure there's some kind of a framework for this, because if we go forward without it, it's going to leave kind of a big hole all of a sudden where now what do we do, right?
Correct. But just they will go back on the quantitative system, and at the end of the year, if they don't meet your expectations, the club's expectations, and they are at the bottom, then they would, or at the top of their group, whichever way it would be, then they would go back into the system.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that good question. Another question you asked there, the rating, the three of us, we will not really be, I don't know if we have a vote or we will be voting, but we're mostly making sure that the implementation of the system is done correctly, and that we're documenting what is being done. Also more of a liaison between the clubs and the Canadian, to make sure that if there is questions and if there is tweaking that needs to be done, that we can set up for next year. And then all those little potholes that we will run over.
A question a lot of my members had regarding this is just, I know that it's obviously we're just focused on this coming year, but with this system being implemented, like, is there going to be rules that, because you're saying that we could basically move somebody up and drop somebody down from year to year. Like, if they're in the top 15% one year and then the next year they have not so good of a year, they're in the bottom 10%. Like, are they going to be moving year to year? Or are you guys going to implement something to kind of avoid that from happening? Like, it doesn't really give people much time to figure out their new rating if they're automatically going to be dropped again anyway the following year.
So if the system is,
Robert,
go ahead, Laura.
I was going to say, Aspen, the intent, honestly, is that people get more comfortable year over year. And as all of us get more comfortable with the data, we reduce mid-season year or moves where people are getting moved around mid-season, and we become more comfortable with year over year. giving people the option to make their teams at the beginning of the year. If somebody truly is at the top of one rating or the bottom of another rating, they might ping pong back and forth for a little while. As we all know, there's still going to be quite a variation. If you have 100 riders in a rating, the top rated rider within that rating is vastly different from the bottom rated rider. So can you move back and forth year over year? Yes, if that is what the data shows. But again, the intent is that it's happening at you're finding that out, I would say, in November, and you have more than adequate time to make your teams for the following year. Robert, I'll let you add to that.
Again, too, that's another very good question. Again, too, if our rating system is right and you're at the top of a number, you should move up into the bottom of the number. So that possibility could be there. But at the same time, your club at that point in time can decide, okay, you're at the bottom 10% of your number, you just moved up. If they want to give you another year and you guys come up with a good reason, you probably will be able to keep that rider at the higher number and then move somebody else down. Or if you think there was a mistake done at that time and wants to move them back down because you think that they just had a good year, then you move them back down. But it'll be done all through numbers, and the clubs will have a say on that. So we don't, as the Canadian, mind a rider going back and forth every other year or whatever else if they're at that bubble. But then again, too, that's where the clubs can step in and indicate why they think, and that's what we would give you guys the options for.
Thank you.
Graham, you've got your hand up.
I think one comment I would say, just in terms of your cutoff level, now that we're more familiar with how you guys came up with the 15%, the 4 to 5 move last year was an abnormally large move in terms of number of people who were raised because of the stretch of the numbers to the number 7 system. I think we only moved 7 threes, and there's significantly more of them, of course. So from where I'm sitting, I think that number is too big and not representative of the average, perhaps, just based on my experience from the end of 2024, because the 4 to 5 was an abnormally large proportion of people relative to the other numbers, other than perhaps, maybe the 6, because there's so few of them. But in terms of the batches or stratified within each stratification of numbers, 4 to 5, I think, was very much larger than the rest of them. And I think 15% is bold. And in my opinion, and I'd be more on the cautious side of this thing, leaning towards a bigger cutoff is a much bigger risk than a smaller cutoff in a soft launch where you retain more subjectivity amongst the rating persons.
I can answer that if you want. Again, too, that's thank you for asking that question. As a Canadian, we have been told that we are heavy on the bottom numbers, and we do have a lot of the larger numbers on the bottom. So we are hoping that the 15% will help spread out the numbers and have a more even numbering system where we're using more of the numberings, and this will implement that. So if a number has a large number of riders in it, a rating has a large number of riders in it, it will move them up into the next group. And again, too, 10% move down is just a point. If the clubs want to move more down, they can move more down also.
I will also add to that, and we looked at RSNC quite a bit when we were building this. RSNC actually doesn't state a percentage. So potentially what we could even do for the implementation of the years or the rule book is actually remove a specific percentage, but say a set minimum threshold percentage will be set each year to move up, and a suggested percentage will be set to move down. And that percentage could be modified year over year based on the meeting and based on the riders. So I think some flexibility with that number actually could be important. And from a written rule book standpoint, not having that set in stone, though I do also think it's important that all of our riders and competitors know where that line is in the sand as far as where you get moved up.
Yeah, I think that's a nice compromise. I still would maintain that I think caution early would be my recommendation. And then to Robert's comments, I would say that, this rating system is usually, going to resemble somewhat of a pyramid. And that perhaps we don't need to be forcing people into a higher rating, because I think there's an inherent risk in that too, that we're pushing people who aren't ready because they happen to fall within this 15% or whatever percentage it could be, and then that could threaten their interest in the sport, especially given our lack of, well, I shouldn't say lack of membership, but we don't have a ton of new people coming in, and members are precious, and I think that needs to be a primary focus for sure.
Do you have a like you're saying caution, Graham, but I'm going to push back and say if 15% is too much, what would your suggested percentage be?
I think it's tough to come up with on the spot. I would say maybe 5 would be a knee-jerk reaction, and then I still maintain, and I know that I said this last meeting, that with this information, because it's great information, the raters will make better decisions. And I think we're going to see that manifest. So I think the information, having a cutoff percentage in that smaller amount, being maybe 5%, and then giving the raters this data is going to allow them to make good decisions. And you're still going to see that come into play where you have, maybe 8%, or I'm making up numbers, obviously it's arbitrary, 8 or 12 or whatever percent get moved still. Whereas you have these people who had these, superb seasons, that seems to be a concern. People who are really succeeding at a very high level who need to be moved automatically. And then that'll allow us to assess the system better, whereas we're taking a little bit less of a risk on moving people automatically. And then if we feel year 2, the rating chairs are not moving enough people still, perhaps we could adjust that. But I really think coming in low should be a priority.
I think we hear it. I think again, we will present if the proposal now that's going to be voted on in 2 weeks is 15%, because we have to allow the board members time to take it. Can it be changed? Yes. Can it be edited year over year? Yes. But the big thing is getting away from individuals making decision and letting data make the call, and taking the opinion based away of, well, sure, that person had a great year, but we don't think he's ready. Well, if the data shows that person had a great year, who is to say that he's not ready? So I think we hear it. I think we'll have to take as a committee if we're going to do a revision or not before the vote. But for the purpose right now of the vote, and also revision comes out after this meeting, that it will be the top 15% for the soft launch.
I just kind of want to add on to that. And I do agree with you, Graham, that when we get members into the sport, we want to cherish them and keep them. However, I would disagree with you. I think we had a lot of new members this year. I know I don't want to just... I'm not sure about BC, but in Alberta, just being the person who sort of saw new names and whatnot, there are a lot of new people who have joined our sport. And I think I've seen new people have a ton of success at the sport this year. And hopefully they come back next year. So I would say we have probably like 50 to 70 new members this year.
Just to add one more to that. You know what? I'll just leave it at that. I think Laura answered you correctly. Thank you.
Other questions, guys? Board members. I know this was for many of you the first time that you've heard about the concept. We've talked about it, but it was the first time seeing it for you guys. And hopefully many of your respective regional board members and your member association members are on the call tonight. Other questions about this, so you feel that you're well informed in order to make a vote on it?
Laura, I just have a couple things. One is you had mentioned RSNC, and Graham was talking about the 15% thing. I'm pretty sure they use some sort of a bell curve within each number rating so that it's not exactly 10% or 5 or 8 or 15 every year in each group. And I don't really understand how they do it. I've never dug into it, but have you found out exactly what they do? And maybe that's something we can implement, to Graham's point about moving people.
So, and yes and no. I mean, it's fairly proprietary. I don't know exactly. That being said, and I'm not trying to shut down the conversation, but we have to have a go or no go point on this. Otherwise, we need to go hire a new ratings coordinator to continue with the old system. So the questions are about the system that we've proposed today, and that can be refined year over year. So the vote that's going to happen by the Canadian board, and why I want to ensure the Canadian board members understand, is based on the system presented today. Does that mean that after we see if this system were to get voted in favor of by the board, that we could look over if there were suggestions at the end of the first inaugural season to make changes? Could we look and vote that in? Absolutely. But I think at this point, we have to have a system that we've proposed, and we either have to vote for or against that system and move to implement it and refine it from there, or we have to go back to the old system, because we can't, frankly, there's not time to make additional changes and implement it this year.
Yeah, no,
Laura,
I get that.
I'm going to
That's
disagree
fine.
with you though. I do think that this is kind of the conversation we need to have, and there's a lot of people that have questions, and I think that I don't necessarily think it's great for us to have a hard vote yes or no when there's a lot of elements to this rating system that could be great, but there's also a lot of parts that we don't agree with. And I think if we can fine tune this a little bit before we have to say yes or no, that's going to be significantly more beneficial than voting this in, having it become a train wreck, and then having to completely refine it next year. Like, this is really valid points, and I think just completely vetoing it before getting to this vote is not the right move.
So all I'm going to say is just remember, guys, that as a board, as a Canadian board, we put together a committee. So there was 4 of us, much like there's a committee of 6 that works on nationals. This wasn't created overnight. We've had since December, so we're almost at 10 months of reiterations and work. Do I think this is perfect, Aspen? No. Do I think it needs iterations and refinement over time? Absolutely. In order to implement this for the season, we have to run this the day after nationals, which is in less than 30 days. I'm letting you know, as a person who's done a lot of work and a lot of iterations on this, I don't know how to fit in additional changes in the next, call it 25 days.
Think too, what I'm just going to say is that I think what everyone's looking at right now is a bell curve, but in a graph. You are looking at a bell curve. You are looking at a bell curve. You're looking at the outliers, the middle, the high, the low. It's just not in a graph.
Thank you, Megan.
So Laura, I think what Laura and Robert and etc. have come up with an alternative rating system. Like Laura said, it's been in the works for a while. I think the groups compromised with already the rating. So Aspen, with you saying, yeah, we can tweak it 5 here, 10 there. But you know what? We've been tweaking this for, I'm going to say probably 6 months now. So is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. But I am going to say we need to make a move on something. And maybe you tweak it a little bit the next year and the next year. And I get it. It's probably for everybody. Graham, you have some good points. Owen, you had some good points. But you know what? I think the group has done a pretty good job because we need something. And you know what? They've made a huge compromise with letting the rating coordinators have a big say if somebody, they agree with somebody up or down. So I think, I don't feel, I guess maybe Aspen, you feel that you haven't heard, and this is the first big conversation you've sort of been involved in on it. But just hearing Laura and Owen and everybody along the way talk about, you know, what the changes or what they compromised on. You know what, guys, I think, you know what, the whole rating and the boards and the chairs and the rating chairs, I think we got such a good group of rating chairs, amazing group of rating chairs that is going to help Laura and Robert going forward. I think now is probably the best time just because I got such high confidence in the rating chairs that are going to help this along. And so I think it's probably a good time.
Another thing just to keep in mind, guys, is the rating chairs have the opportunity that if they feel like the numbers aren't working out and they need to put somebody else into a move, they do have that option this year. And then we're going to analyze that and see where you guys come from. So there's not a lot of difference from other years besides us saying that there's going to be 15 moving. If the top 15, if you guys come up with great reasons and you guys are 100% in agreement that those 15 are not the right 15 and there's another right 15, nothing, like, you guys have that opportunity this year. And then we need to go back to the drawing board and see where things went. But I don't think it's going to be that, because we've looked at what was moved other years from the data that we were able to accumulate, and it was pretty much 50 to 60% on for the moves. And so the data already is very similar to what we are doing, what we did last year. So we do have the data. The data is a lot more refined this year. We're a lot more accurate on our numbers. And again, too, the chairs and the clubs have the right to fix anything that they think isn't right this year. And hopefully there's not going to be a lot. But if there is, you guys have that opportunity. So realistically, all we're doing is the 15%. That's me.
And you're right, Robert. If you do 15%, and Graham, you think it only should be 5%, it might end up at 5% or 10% by the time you guys aren't in agreement or are in agreement with something. That number may change, and then we'll see after this year or next year, see what that looks like. And maybe, Graham, you're right. Maybe it is 10. Maybe that number's 10. You don't know. Maybe we're bang on. Maybe it's 15.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think let's go in order. So if you want to ask a question, if you could raise your hand on the team. So people are doing that. So it'll rank them and then I'll lower their hand. So the next person up is Dwayne.
There, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm on. Sorry guys, but I think the biggest thing here, you're trying, like, you're showing this to the liaisons. I think if you added one word in there, up to 15%, if you just threw that in there, it's kind of it gives you guys some room to tweak as we go. And the biggest thing I think for the whole Canadian here is, I guess, October 42nd, get this data out there so that the numbering chairs and just the general membership can see where they rate against their peers. And I think a lot of that, well, there's going to cause a lot of questions that liaisons and numbering chairs can help fix this. It's not against your committee by any means. You guys put a lot of time and effort into this, but I think if you just kind of, like I say, just change the wording to up to 15%, it covers everything. You're still got it solid, but at the same time, you're not tied to that 15. If it's like you say, higher rated classes aren't going to maybe work. So only one or two move it. Who cares if it's 7%, but it'll work. I think it's a matter of getting this data out to everybody here right away. So right after national, so that the general member can see where he or she rates on the system. And then it's going to be an easier sell. They'll have questions. They'll phone your local numbering chairs, go, what the hell does this mean? Well, hey, we can help walk it through if we're going to sell this deal. But I think it'd be an easier